one piece of information about these essays is to write them in a way that makes you stand out. So, if they ask you about in what academic areas do you excel, what do you attribute this to? By the way, each of these essays has like 3 parts. You need to make sure that you address all 3 parts, okay? And you need to do that seamlessly, okay? So if they ask you, to what do you attribute your success? This story actually comes from an actual Gates scholar that I saw something online, and maybe you have too. He is from Chicago. He does really well in the sciences. So he could have started it off with, my passion is science. I've always loved science. My first science class was honors biology. I did extremely well. I hope to go into that in the future. How exciting is that? Maybe heartfelt, but it's boring. Honestly, it's boring. That student, every one of you could say that. Every one of you has excelled. So how do you stand out? So what he did, and this is something that I always advocate, and I know everybody else up here does too, is you paint a picture. You tell a story. So the way that he started off his essay was like this. It was the first day of my honors biology summer program, and I was late. The door was closed. The teacher opened the door and said, "You need to step outside with me." I stepped outside, and she proceeded to say, "You're one of the most gifted students we have in this class, but you're not stepping up. If you're late one more time to this class, you're out. I believe in you. You need to believe in yourself." And he goes on to say, that was the first time anyone had scolded me in such a positive way. I took those words to heart. You can believe I was not late another day that summer. And then he goes on into talking a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of science and why he loves science and what he wants to do with it. And how that, you see that little picture? It was like a little movie, a little snapshot in time that encapsulated who he was, how that teacher impacted his life, how he was able to change his mindset. They're looking to see that you are adaptable, that you can overcome obstacles. They don't want to hear sob stories. Everybody has obstacles. What did he do? He had an obstacle, right? He wasn't living up to his potential, but what did he do? He took that and very quickly turned it around and said, this is how I'm resilient, this is how I built on this experience. That story is going to resonate with people who read a whole lot better than the first example. So the one thing I can say to you is paint a picture. And if you're not
I looked at that first and I was like, that is way too long. I'm not about to dedicate like weeks to this application for something I don't even know what it is. Do any of you guys think that? I mean, have you seen the application? Like, I don't want to do it, right? Okay. And in all honesty, I didn't invest as much time as I really should have in the application because I did wait so long. I didn't wait till the complete last minute, but it would have been smarter to just kind of gradually, maybe write an essay this week, write an essay next week, fill out tens of thousands of questions you have to answer one week, and that's really all it is pacing yourself application-wise. And that was something that I didn't do. Her best essay, she felt, was actually the shortest essay. And that was honestly the same thing for me. When you write the essays, there's not really a length you should have. I mean, there is 1,000 words per essay. But I didn't really focus on that. I just focused on telling them who I was. So if the essay was like, talk about community service, I would kind of go into a story about myself and then just talk. Because they just want to know who you are. They don't care about all the fluff that kind of comes with writing, like, da-da-da, 5-page paragraph essay. No, this is not about you. So I probably had like 3 paragraphs, a really long body, and it was like a half a page, because that's all I felt that I needed to really tell them, this is what I do as far as this aspect of my life, So it really doesn't matter lengthwise, and I mean, it's just about you telling them who you are, because that's what they want to know. They want to know you. They don't want to know who you pretend to be. They want to know you. And why you
use essays when you think about this application. Don't just think about, so I want to do this, I want to do this, and over spring break, or over winter break, I'm going to go to this person's house and kick it with so-and-so. I want you to think long-term, which might be hard for you to do at such a young age. But the idea that in 4 years, you can apply to any graduate school that you feel like, because you're already funded. You don't have to worry about how am I gonna come up with $30,000 to go to SU, or how am I gonna come up with $53,000 to go to USC.
The scariest part of this whole application, which are those 8 essays. And they're not long essays. Like Zach and Blossom were saying, typically they're about 3/4 of a page, anywhere from about half a page to a page. Usually about 3 paragraphs, would you say?
Depends on the child.
Well, there's a limit. So, if, right, it's a character limit. But it is the most intimidating part. But please remember that these essays that you're writing for Gates can be adapted for so many different scholarships. If you write these 8 essays, you pretty much have a little store that you can go to every time you pick up a scholarship application and say, which one of these essays applies? You can go, you can mix, you can match. Honestly, sometimes you have to start all over from scratch. Sometimes you do. Sometimes it's worth it to actually do a great job on an essay to start all the way over. And you might be thinking, 8, I should be able to choose from that. Sometimes you can't. But you've done it 8 times. Now you know you've gotten even more practice, and you're ready to write that next
Important
essay.
it is that you tell your story. When the people who are reading this finish, you want them to know more about you and them to know you as a person when they're done. Not just some canned thing that you put together, but like Mrs. Webster was saying, you want it to be real. You want it to be about you. I read a lot of essays, and probably the one that stands out in my mind the most, which I was a little taken aback when I started reading it, this young man was talking about being in the public restroom reading something on the wall. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where is this going? And I'm proofreading it for him. And then he proceeds to talk about something he read on the wall and what an impact that had on his life and how it made him look at things differently. And I'm like, okay, well, he got my attention to begin with, and then I was sucked in and I continued to read. So it's very easy when things are boring and just very cut and dried after you've read a number of essays to just say, okay, another one of those, and keep on moving, and that one goes in the... Another thing is I've had 3 Gates Millennium Scholars over the years, and every one of them has said to me, I won't get this, and they keep putting it off. And I keep saying, yes, you will fill this out. So when your counselors are telling you, fill this out, you have a very good chance of getting this. Okay, you have as good a chance as anybody else sitting in this room. So work hard.
Like everything is done online now, and remember, they don't see you. They don't care what kind of purse you carry or what shoes you have on, or if you've got swag when you're talking to them. What they care about is what you're writing, so you're presenting yourself. Because how many of you think, I'm grown? Anybody? Oh, come on. Okay, we turn it
At
off,
least
okay?
part of the time.
Now that you think you're grown, you have to write in a grown way. And the thing I do with all my students, because I read almost all of their gates, come in, read them, and then I will ask them questions. Well, what about this, and why did this happen, and how did you feel? And then we'll start adding parts into it. A little girl last year that did win, she had it done, and I said, you don't have enough. You didn't tell me enough. So she goes, but I don't want to add. It was very hurtful for her to add some of the things she had to add. Other thing I find, though, is that students in general love to take the easy way out in writing. I'll do it the night before, and it'll be okay. We can't do that, and that's part of being grown, is working ahead of time. Because many of you will go to college next year and do that, and you're going to be in so much trouble at midterms. So you can't do that. So the thing I have my students do, I make them read it backwards, word by word, the essays, just to see how it's spelled. Because spell check doesn't work. Because if you tell them you're going to the store, TWO, you're looking silly. But you are going to the store, and spell check won't correct that. So we're looking a lot at the grammar and the English, and I've had them insert texting. That's just a shortcut R, you know? I don't think Bill Gates is putting R, the letter R, in his memos, okay? This is part of growing up. So we read it backwards, then we read it frontwards, we add, you have, like they said, tell a story. You have to be very distinct.
I think one of the things that you also need to be mindful of is it's not just your essay that's important. You have to find two people, a recommender and a nominator, that really know you and are really willing to put the time in to write all of their essays as well. It is not a simple, yes, they did it, no, they didn't. Please, please, please do not give them a day or two notice that you would like them to do this for you, because their essays also need to be quality to tell the story about you. They need to be able to have your phone number or your email to give a call and say, I want to say the story about you, but you got to help me with some details. If you're not sitting right there next to them, please be available on the phone, because this could potentially mean 10 years of no tuition and room and board and no worries, which a lot of college, that's not what the typical college kid has that
You want to
opportunity.
show that you're a resilient, positive person. You may say that you have obstacles, like the young lady that Ms. Thompson worked with. Maybe she had a hard story to tell, but I'm sure she also was very good at saying how she overcame it. And she highlighted her resilience, not her burden. Again, you want to make sure that you read the entire prompt. One of the biggest mistakes kids make is that they don't really look at the prompt carefully and answer. You'll need a copy of your transcript to fill out the application. They do ask you about all your grades. So you do have to have that information in front of you. Whatever you need, just make sure you get with your counselor. You should always type your information, especially your essay to begin with. You know, Word document, beautiful. Send it then to your counselor. I know that most recent Gates recipient I had, I was at Metro at the time. This young lady was from Lynn and McKinley. We just emailed back and forth. So you can email if you need to, if they would prefer a paper, you know, so that they can go through and kind of mark up. Do whatever it is that they're most comfortable with. I would sit down with your recommender and with your nominator, and I would address each one of these questions. I would be a partner to both of them. Sit down for an interview, like they're writing your life story, okay? Make sure they have all the information they need. And again, your nominator is somebody from school who knows your academic record. Typically, that's your counselor. Typically, your nominator is your counselor. When in doubt, recommender can be somebody else at the school. I would say the recommender should be somebody who is an advisor for one of the activities in your school where you've assumed leadership. Okay? So if you're in theater, maybe it's the theater director. If you're in the STEM club, maybe it's the STEM club. Okay, to say to that recommender, you know what? My counselor would like to work with you on that to make sure that we're answering all the questions and we're representing you in the best way possible. It's okay. I did say that in confidence to a few kids. I know you love this teacher, great teacher. Let's think some more about who else could recommend you. Not very often, but sometimes. But the other thing is that if I know that this person knows you really well, has some great things to say about you, I'll probably go up to that person and I'll say, hey, I know this is the first time you're writing one of these. I'd be happy as the recommender goes. It doesn't have to be somebody from your school. The person who wrote one for the last student I had, it was from Battelle. So that's where she did an internship. That person knew about a lot of the leadership things that she had done, a lot of the things she'd striven to overcome. So, excuse me. So that person was not from the school. Okay? So if you have some leadership, community service outside of school, that could be a really good person for you to recommend. Again, offer up the services of someone from your school. You know, thank you for writing this. If you have any doubts, I'd be happy to give you my counselor's phone number.
You do not want to wait until the very last minute to submit on this because their system gets
Crashes.
very, very busy. So you want it in at least 24 hours prior to that date.
I always set a deadline of a week to start. If some of you are saying, well, where do I start? Look at the essay prompts, and you can see them on this green sheet, okay? Essay prompts are there. They're also on your flash guide. Which one of those questions kind of grabs your attention the most? Start with that one, and then start to think about how you're going to tell your story in regards to that essay prompt. How are you going to grab my attention? What are you going to say that's going to make me read yours? So you have to tell a story that's really compelling 8 different times. Okay? So
It doesn't matter which one you start on.
It doesn't
It's
matter.
like a mud puddle, just jump into the middle of it.
I'm sort of one that I like to look at all the questions. I like to think about a beginning for each of them, and then I'll start to fill in the pieces. Because if you just look at the first one and say, I'm just going to start with this one, you may be saying something in that essay that really is better to be saying in this essay. So you have to kind of divide out your ideas and your stories in a way that puts together a whole picture for you. So do read through all the essay prompts first, and it would probably be a good idea just to read through this handout first. Whichever one you think, okay, that one jumps out at me, here's a story I can tell, is it something that's really answering this question and not another question? And get
It's
going.
different than a lot of my students, but when you set up your account on Gates Millennium, please write down your username and password so that you can get back in.
And on this pink sheet, it does say your Gates registration ID. Okay? And on the yellow sheet, it does tell you what you use. Your student's registration identification number. The student's registration identification number is a combination of his or her 5-digit zip code and the last 4 digits of his or her preferred phone number. Whatever phone number is the most consistent. Maybe you've had a home phone forever. Maybe not. Maybe you've had your cell phone for a long time. But you need to remember those last 4 digits. So if you're somebody who's changing phones all the time, probably not a good one. Just make sure you write it down. And write it down, just write it down right inside your folder too. That's another reason you put on this pink sheet so your counselor also has it. Your recommender and nominator need to have that as well. That's how they access your account.